Well, good afternoon, everyone. And we are live on Wednesday. We're usually not live on Wednesday, but we're all busy people, and Sunday just didn't work out for us. But we said we got to do it. So we are going live today. And I want to say hello to my two co hosts, Mr. Jamarr Brown and Mr. Brandon Upson. And we've got a lot to talk about, folks, from the Iran war, rising costs, Jesse Jackson's funeral, and what happened after that funeral, and of course, the South Carolina primaries and general election. And we will do that as soon as I pull up our opening, and we'll see you right after this.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Hemingway, and welcome to A Gathering Place. I said, I'm stepping back because we have young voices who want to be heard, and they're moving on something.
Brandon is really important to you and your business.
Even a basic type of technology, you learn it all.
And people are
Good question.
All right, so we want to welcome our viewers on our YouTube channel for the Gullah Geechee Chamber, our LinkedIn channel, and of course, all our social media for the Gullah Geechee Chamber, Gullah Geechee Foundation, and the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail. And did you guys know that you could share it on your social media?
Oh no, how?
I thought they gave y'all instructions. It's something when you come in, or you can sign in and you can tell it where to go, the destination. And that's all I know, y'all. So I have to send y'all the instructions.
Yeah, we'll do that next time.
Yeah, do it next time.
Yeah, I'm not a techie anyway.
Yeah, I'm like, it's been a while. I'm getting better. I'm getting back in the groove and everything, at least getting the intro and all a little bit smoother. But we want to welcome everybody, and we got a lot to talk about, and let's get into it. We started at 413. I do not believe in the superstition with the 13th number, so we go smooth right on by that. But but it's always good to join my folks here. And if you're interested in joining us as a special guest, contact the Gullah Geechee Chamber, Marilyn at gullahgeecheechamber.org, and we'll be happy to see if we could bring you on as a special guest. But let's do some politics talk today, and we're going to start with the war that the administration and everybody else is still trying to figure out why we went to Iran and bombed it and bombed a girls' school, and just it's just a whole hot mess in the Middle East. So you guys, who wants to start? Brandon, Jamarr, who wants to start?
I'll start with, first off, my heart goes out to the families who have already lost loved ones in this war. What people fail to realize as they are going through the political motions of declaring war or sending troops off to war is that every soldier, airman, seaman, marine who's out there, soldier, they are somebody's child, somebody's mother, father, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, cousin, and them. They are connected to folks here in the mainland, and they are being sent, in this case, to fight a madman's war. And it's a war that has nothing to do with us personally, but everything to do about this rearranging of society to completely work for and benefit the rulers of the ruling class. And people are always talking about the top 1%. I believe the shift that Donald Trump is making is for the people who control the 1%. And that's why we're in this war. When you look at Netanyahu and Saudi Arabia, we can go back and talk about how the dollar moved to a fiat currency and started being backed by petroleum, which is controlled by Saudi Arabia. And now their interest is tied up into this with Iran and Benjamin Netanyahu's regional interest in dominance and control over the American government and military is playing a part in this. We can talk about how I just spent $92 to fill up my tank today. And people in real ways are feeling the immediate consequences of a crazy man's actions and bypassing our tools of our constitution and government and declaring war on other countries. There's a lot that we can unpack here, but I'll land my plane in the air as we go into this conversation.
Jamar?
Well, I think there's, in addition to all of that, I think there are a few troubling things about the situation in Iran. You have a president who you went into this region. Where's your plan? Where's your strategy? Where's your intelligence? Where's the cooperation from well, he calls it Department of War, but Department of Defense? Where's the accountability to Congress? My understanding of the War Powers Act of 1812 is, that Congress is to authorize war, is to authorize military strikes on other countries pending any threat to the national security of our country. And we've seen this repeat pattern of this particular Congress, even as with the slim margins, absolving their responsibility by the Constitution to have checks and balances toward the president of the United States. And so, I've worked with a couple of clients across the country. We still need to be demanding that Congress get an investigation, get intelligence briefings, and that they need to look at the war powers resolutions, right? And I know they've been trying to pass some things now, but we need that because we need to rein this president in. I also think it's particularly interesting that in this case, how we went in following Israel, right? And the relationship with the U.S. and Israel. And this is a decade-long relationship, right, between the U.S. and Israel. But obviously that relationship has been very strained in the last couple of years, particularly with the conflict in Gaza. What does this mean for that? What does this mean, just as Brandon was saying, for our economy? Because this isn't just about Iran when we are facing higher gas prices, higher car prices, right? It's also what's happened in Venezuela. It's also Trump's relationship with Russia in terms of oil and energy and these sorts of things, right? And those costs were already going up before we had any conflicts with these other countries, right? Whether it's a military strike or kidnapping, quite frankly, another president, elected president of a country. And so I think this has long-term implications for our economy, and it's going to hurt working class people. And again, because the Congress is not fulfilling their full responsibility in a rapid manner of really reining this administration in, not just on the war, but so many other issues. But in this case, on the war, it's going to hurt the American people, and it is hurting the American people, and it's going to drive our economy into more difficulty. And who's going to pay the price? It's going to be us who pays the price. And people are going to start having to make real decisions about, do I pay my rent and my mortgage? Do I put gas in the car? Do I stay home? Can I get a job? Where we know that millions of Americans have lost jobs and unemployment is continuing to go up.
And it was a very deliberate loss of jobs too. It wasn't market forces. This was administration that walked in the door knowing that they were going to fire particular demographics. Then you had the situation with Doge, who went in. Oh, we need to talk about that further too. We didn't bring that up.
Yeah, and then you had the DEI bans. Then you had the DEI bans, which then forced the market to change because of how people were hired in. It forced academic institutions to change. And so, Project 2025 is being played to a T. But we saw this coming. And I hate to say it this way. I mean, they wrote a 900-page document to say every step, who was going to be targeted. And all of this is part of this broader movement to really move the country back and to move money to the richest white people in the country.
Absolutely. Hey, can we talk about the cowardice within our Congress? Because even with, I can roll this back. Recently, Lindsey Graham was on TV talking about he's gonna be on the side of Israel till his dying day, like pledging his unfailing loyalty to a foreign government. Like this guy's crazy. But on top of that, if we go back to the tariffs, y'all, the power that Congress has over our budget, our taxation, our import and export, our trade. Congress had the authority and ability to stop Donald Trump from administering those what the court finally said were illegally
Finally.
placed
Mm.
tariffs. His own court, his own Supreme Court. We got to say it's his because he bought and
He
paid
shifted it.
for it.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
you know, but Congress was supposed to do that first, and these cowards sitting up there afraid to lose donors and afraid to be challenged in their primaries. This shows how cowardly they are. You won't do the right thing until you are on your way out the door. That it don't matter then, you gone.
The
Yeah,
damage is
You're
done. The damage
yeah,
is
it's
done.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
yes, yes,
Mhm.
yeah. And you are so right, Brandon, that it just shows how much they are as cowards, that they're out the door and now all of a sudden they're finding courage. And quite frankly, it's minimum courage. It's they're not losing anything by speaking out the way they're doing. And these are not only cowards, they're greedy and power hungry. They're putting titles before the Constitution. They're putting titles before the people of the United States of America. So when they're talking about like the State of the Union, I saw the thing, the guy, I'm going to vote third party because the Democrats put illegal aliens, which there's no such thing as illegal aliens, before Americans. And it's so hypocritical and contradictory because the Republican Party does not care about Americans. They care about greed and power, and they're operating as cowards. And of course, let's talk about the fact there's a group represented by those such as Speaker of the House Mike Johnson who truly believe the rapture is coming. The Christian nationalists, people keep saying Congress needs to stand up to this. Congress has the makeup of Congress as it is right now will never step up to Trump because Trump is doing exactly what they want him to do. So we can't rely on Congress. We've got to get rid of Congress. As it stands, every Republican, local, state, federal needs to go because they may not be in Congress, but by their silence, they are complicit.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I remember that scene in Ghost with Oprah, not Oprah, but Whoopi Goldberg. I feel like she should come out and say, "America, you in danger, girl. you you in danger."
you know, another thing that I get tired of, and Jamar alluded to it briefly. You can see this coming. We saw it coming, and it didn't take Project 2025. Some of the stuff that I see happening now, and the response or lack of response to it, we were talking about this stuff 10, 12 years ago. You can see where America was going politically if you just had the privilege of having some time to sit back and look at what was going on, or you were reading or paying attention. And I say privilege because a lot of Americans 10, 12, 15 years ago were already in survivor mode. But it crept up on people, so they were just making the adjustments, not realizing the bigger picture. They were just like, I didn't make enough this year, so next year I got to tighten up the belt, tighten up the budget. No, the system was already doing what they wanted it to do because there are not enough people willing to stand up and really fight for American citizens, if you will. But I like to say fight for human beings, right?
Yep.
Because the issue of universal health care was an issue even during the Obama administration because the Affordable Care Act was a Republican plan and that was compromised on to get passed. People forget universal health care was already being discussed before Obama was even elected. Yeah. They choose not to go in that direction. So I viewed Affordable Care Act, for example, as a step in that direction because in America, we work slow. In democracy, you do in those big picture items, you work slow unless you get into a war like World War II, then you come back with a new deal because they had to. That's where we got the shift that is now shifting again. 80 years ago, World War II, led into the New Deal, the Depression, New Deal, and World War II. All of that were working together. And unfortunately, we didn't learn our lessons. We did not retain the lessons from that. And now this is partly why we are in the mess that we're in now. But that's why it's so important to know history, and why they don't want you to know history, right? And even the Iran war, what irritates me, people thought, well, they were held hostage for 47 years by the current, government. Well, honey, why were they held hostage for 47 years by the current administration? Because of what America did 50 years ago.
Well, because I mean, like, if we're going to really talk about this, like, the Iran stuff has been going on since Jimmy Carter. Like, even a little bit slightly before that.
The current stuff. Yeah,
right. This is the current fight, right? And so, and so when people are like, oh, Trump just rushed the war, I'm like, we've been having conflict with Iran for about 40, 50 years now. And different presidents have had different things. So, then in the 80s, you had the Iran-Contra, the whole scandal, in the late 80s. And so, but like you said, Marilyn, I think you made a very important point that the country's been going in that direction, and definitely since the 80s. Right, that it's been, really moving to this kind of what they call neoconservative, kind of movement, and I call it neo-segregationalist, type movement, right? Because, the country has been moving to the right, to the right, to the right, to the right, and the Democrats have been moving to the center. And if you have the Democratic Party moving to the right, then the whole country is moving to the right. And so when you try to have a conversation about Medicare for all, or universal health care, or a single payer, like you were using the Affordable Care Act example, the Republicans actually moved the Democratic Party to the right. And so for us, it's about saying, how do we step back and find the most strategic way to understand that, yes, there are independents and people in the middle, but to also understand of what is our long-term value as a Democratic Party, especially in this fight, especially because, let's be honest, Trump has got to leave. And what is the Democratic Party's plan when he does leave? He's got to leave. There is going to be a post-Trump movement. And what does that begin to look like? And so you see the emergence of a J.D. Vance. You see the emergence of a Marco Rubio and these other people. And we've got to start on the other side, really start to strategize of what does the future look like, but also be announced to us, what is the damage? So for me, everybody's been kind of saying, well, the Democratic Party, what's the fight? What's the fight? The point is, for the Trump administration, is to create damage to other people, right? And if the Trump administration's goal is to create damage, why are we not stepping up to mitigate that damage, right? The Democrats don't have the majority in the House or the Senate. We don't expect that they can stop everything, right? But what is the things that can be done to mitigate damage so that when we know that we get to the post-Trump era, we can try to stabilize the country in some way? Because you're going to have a new deal. You're going to have a broad economic, type package that's going to really restabilize the economy and restabilize the market in a meaningful way, right? For people to be thinking about healthcare, for people to be thinking about creating jobs, tax credit investments for businesses, etc., right? And all of these different things. And so I also think that, yes, in the current moment of everything that people are facing, the problem that we're having is that Democrats are still not presenting the full agenda of what we need to be doing around how they're going to mitigate. Because I think that we have to be careful to say that, and people are doing well in primaries. Obviously, we did well, in the election last fall, and we're still doing well in some special elections around the country. And I'm not knocking that work. I think that's very important. But we cannot flip the House and flip the Senate back on just anti-Trump. Yes, it's important to show the dangers. It's important to show the harm. But it's also important to show what is the fix and what is the solution, what is the cure that we are offering that is going to move the country forward. Because I'm hearing a lot of, especially Black people around the country, saying that they're not going to vote. And you ask them, why are you not voting? It's not even about Democrat versus Republican. It's about, for all of the hoopla and everything going on, I can't put gas in my car. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay the rent. I don't know if I can feed my children. There's a lot of people right now that's operating in the sandwich generation, as you call it, right? That you may be taking care of a parent, but also your children, right? And so all of these economic pieces are moving. And so how do you mitigate damage in the fastest way for people and really be able to message that? And so that's why even coming after all of these special election wins, coming after this election, it's still important for people to start seeing what is the affordability agenda and how do we outline that? Because candidates who are talking about affordability, yes, they're winning, but there are a lot of candidates that look like our communities that are not, while they are talking about, the affordability issue. And I think that's what people have to see. They have to see themselves represented, and they have to see that people actually care about their issues. And then the last piece, I know y'all were talking about like Lindsey Graham and all of this. What we're seeing from the Congress is corrupt power corrupts absolutely. And that's exactly what's happening. Like you said, Marilyn, that they want Trump to do this. They're just letting him be the face and take the hits.
Because they know he's going to leave. As you said, he's going to leave.
Well, number one, they are letting him take the hits. But number two, they let him take the hits because they've drawn their own districts to keep themselves safe. So where's the real accountability?
Yeah. And it's what I heard something you said just then, Jamarr, you spun the phrase a little bit. You said corrupt power corrupts absolutely. Instead of absolute power corrupts absolutely. See, the thing is, when we have power, we're afraid of power as Democrats. I think that we have conditioned ourselves to believe, just like we did when First Lady Obama said, when they go low, we go high. And then we found ourselves getting kicked in the teeth every which way we looked. When we have the opportunity to wield power, we sit on it. And we see that at every level of government. I'm literally watching in local governments, people with authority and power get railroaded because they want to maintain diplomacy when they should be wielding their power. Seeing folks in the state house who show up and mark themselves present, but don't join in on the fight because they believe that they're powerless, or they allowed the other side to convince them that they're powerless. And then we look at our federal government where they literally choose to sit on their power and their authority and allow this madman to get away with so many violations of humanity, not just breaking the law, but violating, our humanness overall. I do want to talk about, for the folks who are watching, people who are out here, I tell y'all I just put $92 in my gas tank, but folks can't afford to put $92 in their gas tank when just 2 weeks ago, I filled up my tank and it was $2.40 a gallon. And then I go there today and it's $3.70 a gallon in just 2 weeks. Folks already barely making it to work as it is. And now they're trying to figure out what in the world can they do. And I see we have a No Kings rally on March 28th here in South Carolina. I saw Rock Hill, Columbia, and Charleston announce that they're having theirs. But those groups are showing up, speaking out, showing, power in numbers. But at some point, because we've been doing these No King rallies now for over a year, that has to translate into something tangible. And I think that there are organizations and partnerships that can be formed. I think that, the leaders of those organizations can work with some of our or even identify the organizers within that organization, have them run for office. Filing, we're in the middle of filing right now in our state in South Carolina. The deadline is the 30th, right, Marilyn?
Yes, that is correct.
I think if you're trying to figure out what the hell I can do to make a change, I think you go up there with your couple coins, reach out to family, friends, neighbors, cousins, whoever, get your coins together and go and put your name on the ballot and talk about the hurt that you're facing. Talk about the issues that keep you up at night, because you better believe there's hundreds of people who feel the same way you do.
I'm going to be a contrarian regarding the No Kings rally.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope people do get upset with me. you're not going to see anything tangible from the No Kings rally until they protest Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Because protest, the definition of a protest is to upset the system, is to fight against the norm, to protest against the norm, the system that's not working for you, and to have a planned protest on a Saturday because people they're not at work, so it's more convenient. Well, protests are not supposed to be convenient. You're supposed to make it inconvenient for the people who are in power. So until they have a No Kings rally on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's going to be a feel good occasion.
Yeah.
And nobody's talking about that. Go ahead,
Jamarr. They won't have and as somebody who's worked in the movement for a very long time, the problem with it is you won't have anything tangible until you have consistency, right? We didn't start to get civil rights in public transportation until we didn't ride the bus for 382 days, right? Like you it's not just interrupting the system, it's also about the economic impact. And how do these communities of people demonstrate their economic power? And so people have to also start making the difference between there's like political and organizing power, and then there's financial and economic power, and they've got to be together. And so, yes, great to rally and run for office and do the political thing, but what's the economic and the financial thing, right? What's the boycotts, right? You know, it's or are we funding candidates, right? You know, those types of things. Like, where do you start to move your money? And we're not going to have real change until people understand political and economic power go together.
Correct. And a good example of that is Target and that boycott of Target, which now there's confusion because some people, it's ended because they had a discussion with Target and no one else knew about that discussion, I think. And then you have some people who are like, now, no, it's still on. And I, for one, am continuing my boycott of Target, which is quite easy for me to do because there's no Target in my hometown of Georgetown. So I've always boycotted it before it was cool. But that also shows the lack of commitment. That also shows that people did not learn some lessons from the civil rights movement. And I think people get caught up in the 1960s civil rights movement, but the 1960s could not have happened if there wasn't lynching reports in the 1930s, if there wasn't pushback in the 1940s on the state level against one-party rule, which in the 1940s was mostly in the South, the Democratic Party, and there were individuals on local state levels who had progressive Democratic parties to fight against the one-party rule in the South, which was the conservative Democratic Party. So I think people get stuck in the 1960s, that was a culmination of the work that had been happening for decades. I say that, and I don't want people to panic and think, oh gosh, we're going to be in this situation for decades. I do think we're going to be in this situation a long time and feel the negative impacts of the situation, but I also think it's going to be shorter. And the reason why I think it's going to be shorter is because we have technology now that they did not have in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s that speeds stuff up. Even the fact that the three of us can come on once a month and just talk about what we're talking about. And this is around the world at this point. Anybody who tunes into any of our social media around the world can see what we're talking about. So it speeds up getting information out. The issue is, what kind of action are people taking? And we miss so many opportunities. I'm going back to No Kings Rally, and I'm not beating up on it, but I think no one's really talking about this. Because rally, do the No Kings. We get that. But when things happen, for example, going to war with Iran, two things should have happened that I not see happen, or maybe they happened and they did not get the coverage. Americans should have been out on the street. We should have been at the White House with homemade signs and banners protesting the Iran war. And Congress should have come back to D.C. that day. By any means necessary, where you got in your damn car, you got on the train, you got on the bus, you got on the airplane. especially Democrats, should have just en masse come back to DC and just said, I'm here doing the business of the people. Now, we may not be in session because Mike Johnson, who supports this war that they cannot justify, it's not doing his job. But as Democrats, we are here and willing and ready to do the job and work of the people, because this is an illegal war, because he did not come to Congress. And I didn't see those things. That's the mindset we have to have in this moment. And I fear we are rapidly running out of time.
You spoke about it earlier. It's about people being comfortable. They didn't show up outside of session because they were already comfortable and they had things to do.
and they already had we already have a rally scheduled, so we'll wait till the 28th of March to protest. But look what has happened since we went into Iran.
Yeah,
right. Every day is something. Every day is something. You know, I know we got limited time and we have a whole list of things to go. Are we good with Iran war? Anything else? I pull up.
I just want to just remind people again. There's no such thing as a moral war. Folks are literally going to war means that if you are above the age of 40 and you have not served in the military, that somebody is going to be in your place fighting in somebody other country. Somebody else's child is about to put their lives on the line for you. And for those who sit back and, can't wait to see the news footage of the explosions and the, talk about what type of missile we launch or bunker busters that we're, bombarding on another country. This is not a video game. This is real life. And folks don't get second, third, and fourth lives. They're putting the only one that we have on the line. So we got to remember that this is serious.
It's very serious. And I can remember when we went into Iraq under George Bush, and my father, who was a 29-year Air Force veteran, me talking to him about, do you think it may get to the point that they'll call you back up? And y'all, he was old, y'all. I mean, this, he definitely was not in his 40s. I was probably in my late 30s, so he wasn't even close. But it's like, because if you run out of troops, right? If you don't get enough people to sign up, they gonna come get you. You might not be on that front line, but you're gonna be in there someplace. And so it's very, very serious. It's because we were not prepared. We were not prepared, and we are still not prepared to be in Iran.
You're right.
It's a time. It's a time. Let's move on to another important subject, and they're all important, the SAVE Act. And then we're going to come back to Jesse Jackson Jr. and all of that. But let's talk about the SAVE Act, which is really a voter suppression act. And in particular, as a woman, every day, y'all, I am like happy. I didn't know at the time in my 20s when I said I never wanted children. I did think I was going to get married. Neither one happened. But so this actually, in a really strange way, is not going to impact me if they pass this, because my name has never changed. But as a woman, this is straight up voter suppression. It's voter suppression for everyone, where in particular, if you change your name just does not match your original birth certificate. And a lot of married women who changed their name when they got married, they're going to get excluded from voting if this act passes. And so, yes, it's a no for me when it comes to the SAVE Act. But y'all, we'll start with Jamarr on this one since Brandon started. Go ahead.
I actually think, outside of what the Supreme Court has already done over the past few years to gut the Voting Rights Act, this is the most dangerous piece of legislation that will damage our democracy for decades, if not a generation. If this passes. And what I mean by that is we never had a conversation, at least in recent and modern history, about using your citizenship in a more clear way about dictating who can vote, right? Because most states have voter ID law, right? Where you need to use a license or a military ID or some other state issued ID. I think that is a thing, right? But 50% of Americans do not have a passport, right? It is very hard for, especially our senior citizens. Some of them, you can't even find their birth certificates, especially if they live in rural communities. What about people who live in rural communities and the hospitals are closed? Right. And where are the records? Right. and people are going to have a hard time finding those records. So I think tangibly we all agree that this is dangerous. What is all the other piece that is really dangerous is that this will federalize elections, right? And we know that elections right now are run by the states, right? We have secretaries of state that run at the state level. Obviously, there are boards of elections and commissioners of elections. And running the election out of the federal government, which is not on the ground in a lot of ways, opens the door for a lot of things. It opens the door for chaos. It opens the door for confusion. It opens the door to change processes. What is the training that's going to happen? It opens door for federal military and law enforcement intervention, because there's a huge talk about that happening in this election, that the National Guard or even ICE agents, quite frankly, could be sent, as well. So in terms of the actual people being able to prove their citizenship, especially in rural communities and amongst senior citizens, and who actually will be at the polling locations and who can show up at the polling locations, this is important. So yes, everybody should be calling their senator. I don't care if your senator is a Democrat or a Republican. Everybody should be calling their senators right now, because there will be nothing you can do at the state level if this is not something you can go back to your state and then go write legislation. This is something that will have to be reversed. That means you'd have to flip the Congress and the White House at the same time in order to flip, unless you go to the court and somehow the court throws it out, which God knows what this court will do in a lot of ways. And so I really do. And if people have not been paying attention, I hope people will really pay attention to that, because we have many rights, obviously, in this country by our Constitution, but all of our rights are struck by the right to vote, right? Whether you have right to access to health care, abortion care, right to due process, all the things that we care about, all is rooted in having the right to vote and picking our elected officials who make decisions on policies for our lives and for our rights every single day. So please, everyone who's listening and following, please call your, I don't care who your senator is, please call your senator and tell them those 2 points are very important, that we do not need to federalize our elections, and we do not need to put people in more of a restrictive position to prove their citizenship and their identification, when there are many states already that have strict laws on the books that require you to take an ID into the polling location, which could be your driver's license, another state issued ID, a military ID, a passport that already exists as well. So and if we allow this to pass and Donald Trump to sign it, this will impact us for a generation. What else gets impacted? It's also redistricting. That's coming up in 2030. The census, there's so many things that get impacted by this that we have to do everything we can to stop it.
Brandon?
Yeah, my mom is going to be directly affected. Her birth certificate still has her listed as baby girl Upson, and that is not her name. She's been fighting her entire adult life with the bureaucracy and the administration to get this fixed. We thought we had it fixed last year, and it's just been the toughest administrative battle I've ever witnessed. She's out of pocket thousands of dollars trying to get this fixed, trying to get her passport. She's gotten affidavits from her doctor that she's had for the last 32 years. From even our family Bible, where my grandmother took meticulous notes about the date, time, and place of all 13 of her 11 how many, Lord, 10 that lived.
A lot.
Yeah. But it's all in the family Bible, even down to us grandchildren, until she passed away. And none of that has been helpful. And something like this would just add another thing that my mom is, left out of as an American citizen. But I think back on what Jamarr was saying about encouraging people to write their senators or call their senators. And I think that, something that you can do that might fall on somebody's heart at the right time. But these MFers don't care. the ones that are already made up their mind that this is what's going to happen. It's just like I was watching State Representative David Weeks on the floor last week when they were debating whether or not to put the Ten Commandments in the classroom. And he took in great fashion scripture directly out of the Bible about, why this should not be and why they should amend that bill that was debated on the floor. And they tabled his amendment immediately, no question about it. It was they already have their minds made up. The only way we're going to stop and turn back the damage that they are currently doing to our democracy, to our country, and to us personally. Everybody should take this personally because they're coming after us. We got to vote these people out of office. That is the only fix. There's some other stuff out there that folks are planning, but the thing is voting. We got to make sure that every person that we know has verified their voter registration and has a plan to get out and vote on the very first day of early voting, because we already saw what happened in Texas. Don't want that to happen here. And I know we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but I really believe the only recourse we have is our power at the polls.
I agree and disagree with you on that. We have more than one option, but we don't want, in general, people don't want to go to the extreme option.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't do what you have suggested, vote, and even before November, we're going to have to make some real decisions, and it may come to that. But we're not going to say that. I may say it later. Who knows? Depends on how I feel. But yes, go vote. But you got to get engaged too. You got to go talk to your people at a minimum. We've talked about being comfortable. We've talked about the moderate voter before we even came on, folks. And this is just obviously Marilyn speaking. I think we're actually already beyond that. People just haven't gotten the courage yet to go beyond that. But I'll leave that right there. So just go vote, y'all. And go call your senator and representative and tell them we do not need the SAVE Act at all. Because
do all the things.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Do all the things, Brandon. Do all the things. What did you say? Whoopi Goldberg? America? Girl.
You're in danger, girl.
You're in danger, girl.
So I want to offer something.
Go ahead,
because,
Jamarr.
I won't say that I disagree, but I want to pivot the conversation a little bit, because telling people to go vote is not the solution right now. Because if the goal of the legislation is to stop people from voting, you have to stop the legislation before you can vote the people out. So for me, it's yes, I know it sounds cliche to say call your member. Hell, we might need to have a day of action and everybody show up. That's what King's people should have done last year when it was time to pass that one ugly bill. That's another topic. So and so for me, it's and then what I think people should start doing is we need to start organizing their donors. We need to start targeting their donors. One of the things when I was at Color of Change for almost 3 years, and one of the things that we did with our campaigns was also about, it's not just that elected official, it's who are they listening to, and they need to be targeted too. And I want to say targeted in political ways. I don't want to say targeted in a violent way. I want to say that for the record. Right. And so we would actually find their top donors and we would send to our people, hey, you need to call those donors and tell the donors to tell their people what not to do either. Because if those folks start hearing from their constituents and their donors, that's when they have trouble. And so how do we hit them at their point of influence to get them to do the thing that we actually need to do that protects a fundamental right that we have worked so hard for and protected, for so many decades. So I think it's not just the call to the person. It's also how are we organizing around their sphere of influence to influence them to make a decision that we need.
See, I don't think these folks care about what the hell their constituents have to say in the first place.
I'm talking
you
about the
got folks.
donors.
No. I'm talking about
Oh,
the representatives and
they're called.
senators who have,
Okay, I see.
right, because even here, Ralph Norman, you call his office, and they'll send you to voicemail, or they won't respond to your email. Or I remember we went in there and took a couple thousand petitions one time, and they just threw it in the trash. Like, they these folks already have their minds made up. Now, what you said
Okay.
about the donors, I've seen that in real time, and that works better. So, no Kings folks, if any of y'all listening, David, Michael, I know those two who are doing really good work. Um, Go to the FEC files, pull that list of donors, see which big donors are their addresses are in there. You can write them to tell their puppets what to do. Like, I think that is a more better use of action and time to try to influence the donors to get these people to do something differently. But when it comes to us everyday people, I really and truly don't believe that these Republicans, and I'll say it specifically, really care about what their constituents have to say.
Which is why it's
And
more than a political moment. It's a
Mhm.
moral moment. And you got to I
Mhm.
like the donor idea because that hits the donors in the
Mhm.
pocket. Boycott
they need because why are you funding this?
their companies. Yes,
Right.
boycott them.
Mhm.
Boycott the companies that
That's
make
right.
them wealthy enough
Mhm.
and that means sacrifice. That
Mhm.
means that might mean
And
not
go
going
ahead.
out to
Sorry.
dinner anymore.
Mhm.
That might mean making 2 trips by car in the week rather
Mhm.
than 5. And it's a serious sacrifice, right?
Mhm.
So that you don't spend that money because we are simply our money, whether we're a taxpayer or our income, is funding the donors that are funding the elected officials.
Yep.
Go
Mhm.
ahead, Jamarr.
And where's the Democratic strategy around amendments and delay? Because
Mm.
because we're talking about the outside game, right?
Yeah.
The things
Yeah.
that we can do and we need to
Mhm,
do.
mhm,
I
mhm.
mean, I'm a former lobbyist too, right? Where
Yeah.
it's like,
Speak on it.
but
Speak on it.
y'all got to have the inside. We need 100
Thank you.
amendments on this bill.
Yes.
Hold this thing
Mhm.
up as long as you can before you get to a point where it's just like,
Mhm.
even if the bill passed, somehow you couldn't even implement it because it's just too
Yeah.
close to the election. I mean, that's what people are asking for. And
Right.
yes, those amendments are going to fail. The average person knows that. I
Mhm.
think people are starting to realize, okay, we're not going to get everything we desire and everything we want, but we also don't want to see this kind of legislation just go through and just go through and just go through.
Mhm.
People want to see you fought with every tool you have.
Yep.
And
I
so
am
then at the end, you come and
Mhm.
say, engagement, the win wouldn't be a policy win. The win would be engagement, because what will still happen is you still
Mhm.
need people, even with new rules, to show up and vote. But
Yeah.
people are already discouraged from voting. They will already have these restrictions on voting. And then if you lost the fight that you did not have the inside ball game on, people really won't show up to vote,
I agree with you.
especially with all of these restrictions. And so for me,
Yeah.
I think we talk a lot about the outside and what we all can do, but
Mhm.
we also still elected those Democrats to be on the inside, to be fighting for us. And so, and then that's where these other advocacy groups come in, and they should be working with the elected officials on helping draft what those amendments look like, because they all have lawyers and policy experts, right? That's what they do, is to help facilitate legislation on issues that their organizations work on. And so there should be 100 amendments, 50, 100 amendments, and force their hand and put the vote on the board.
Yep.
And
Because if they're going to absolve their responsibility, an amendment delay strategy will make them put it on the board. Because at some
Mhm.
point you have to just hear the thing.
Yeah. You gotta call the roll.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
So
it also goes to messaging, because the next step is they should be having press conferences every day about this. Every member of Congress and their staff or the appropriate local state officials need to be replicating that message up and down the
Mhm.
ballot, again on message. And I just don't see that. And
where's the grassroots too? Like
exactly.
who's educating people at church? This is the time. We're going into the spring season. This is the time of festivals, right? There are
Mhm.
going to be millions of people in community.
Yep.
At events you don't even have to organize. And so, so there's inside, outside, and they got to speak to each other, and I don't see that happening here. However, I don't know if they have the 60 votes, but I know that they will try to do everything. And one of the things I'll say is John Cornyn, the senator from Texas, who's in a runoff himself, couldn't even a 4-term senator couldn't even win re-election outright. He's now talking about killing the filibuster.
Yep.
He's campaigning on that in Texas.
Yep.
If they get to kill the filibuster, you don't need 60 votes. That makes it more dangerous. So the Republicans are going as far to be willing to change their own rules. And so we've also got to have that inside defense strategy around amendments, but also around the rules changes to not allow them to change the rules so that they could ram this legislation through.
Right. And you made me think about something that former state senator Robert Ford always says. When you get elected, you got to learn how to do your job. And that means also learning all of the parliamentarian acrobatics that you can conduct in order to slow something down, stop it, and try to kill it.
We killed an abortion ban in Texas because we filed 86 amendments. And at some point, the Republican just got up and just pulled the bill at the deadline. Literally, the deadline was midnight, and the Republicans had to go to the floor because we were only on amendment 30 something. We still had another 50 amendments. It was 11:50. We weren't going to get through 50 amendments.
Yeah.
We killed that abortion ban at that time in Texas. It would have been a complete ban years ago if we didn't do things like that, because we worked with the Democratic legislators in the House to be able to understand, like you said, that parliamentary procedure and using it as a tool to mitigate harm. And so the Democrats have to step up to show that more.
I hope, Marilyn, that we could get a member of the state house on here.
Oh yeah, that'd be good
to have a conversation with us. And I got a couple in mind because there's a couple
Let's
that
get 'em
are
on.
really fighting. And then some of the organizers of the No Kings rallies. I would love to have a conversation with them.
But the next time we meet, the No Kings rally will be over. At least this one.
Unless y'all
willing to hop on and just talk for 30 minutes.
I mean, I think it still will be good, because then I hope the conversation will then be, we just had a rally on March 28th. Here's our next step.
Yeah.
That could be it too. Hey, I'm open. Invite them. Let me know. I'll send them a link. Get them on. We need to know this, because not only do you have to add all these amendments, you've got to shape public perception. And I know people hate hearing that, but guess what? Your perception's being propagandized now anyway. It is happening, and you don't even realize it because it's been so normalized. So let's impact public perception for the good guys for once, right? And when I say good guys, I say that with nuance when it comes to the Democratic Party, because they funky too. All right, and I'm a Democrat, so so they ain't straight up good guys. They part of the problem too. But this is why the people need to turn out. This is why it's so important to get involved, engage, and vote, because some of these Democrats need to go too. And I'm going to throw this, then we're going to move on. That I know he's mad at me, even though he's never said it, but has. The great James Baldwin says, "I can't believe what you say because I see what you do." But in a public meeting, I just said to him, when I vote for someone and send him to represent me, and most people do, I want you to fight for me. That's why we're sending you there. I cannot go there. I don't have the time. We are at work, but you have to put yourself up as an elected official, as a leader. We're voting for you so you can go and not be happy just to have proximity to power or be in power. You got to fight for the people. You got to fight. And that's what we're
to maintain power, there is a fight that has to happen.
Exactly.
Let me tell you, some of these people go to that state house and they're taking a good nap. And they just want to be there on Tuesday and Wednesday so they can go to the receptions and get invited to the governor's ball.
Don't tell me that.
Oh, well, okay.
I'll because that's a hot mess. But I'll tell y'all what I told a member of Congress, actually. And we were having dinner. I won't say the name. I'm not gonna put you on Front Street like that. But And we were going back and forth, and he was just, Jamarr, and you inside they make it so hard, and they da 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 da. And and what do you mean by this fight? I said, at the end of the day, you fought to get elected to be here.
Mhm.
So now y'all asked for the job. We gave you the job. Now we're asking you to do the thing that here's the job description. Now that changes because the country changes, right?
Mhm.
But here's the job description. We're asking y'all to do A, B, and C. That's it. Now all the other stuff, if y'all feel like doing that, that's on y'all. but here are the fundamental things that people are asking you to do, right? And so it goes exactly back to what we were just saying about using parliamentary procedure, being in committees and all the things, right? And that's what I implore elected officials, both sides, but particularly Democrats, is you all asked for the job. We're now holding you accountable to do the thing you asked us for, which is our
Right.
vote. And our vote is supposed to be a sign and a token, if you will, of confidence in leadership to do a thing, right? To advance policy and or to mitigate harm, right? And so when they come back and just like, oh, I don't know, and I don't know. Well, we didn't elect you to not know. We elected you to figure it out, right? And so there are lawyers, there are parliamentarians, there are advocacy groups, there are lobbyists, right? There are constituents that have lived in personal experience, right? And so there's ways and avenues for you to figure it out, right? And so if I'm saying that because there are a lot of people running for office up and down the ballot this year, and every one of them that gets elected will face some type of challenge or multiple challenges. We live in a challenging time, but saying that we live in a challenging time doesn't absolve you of facing the challenge. That's why you need to build relationships. That's why you need to build coalitions. That's why you need to understand the rules. That's why you need to understand parliamentary procedure as a strategy to navigate, what legislation, what policy, for example, is being heard. And fundamentally, all of you that are running for office, you're asking for a job. We're going to ask you to do the job.
Well said. Well said. One final topic for today. We lost the late great civil rights movement leader, Reverend Jesse Jackson, and born in Greenville, South Carolina, and rose to the height of the civil rights. And then we lose Brandon. He was messing with his camera, but we're gonna keep going.
Yeah.
He'll pop back in. And they had many memorials and funerals to Reverend Jackson. And then afterwards, he went back to Chicago. Then afterwards, I started hearing some stuff on social media popping up and everything about Jesse Jackson Jr. was upset. And I originally heard Biden and Obama. And then you two told me before we came on, Harris was included that also. So let me tell you what I saw and know. And then it's a lot that I don't know, but I know when it was announced that he had passed, Reverend Jackson has passed, that they did not want politics. They invited Trump, J.D. Vance. They invited across the political spectrum to mourn together Reverend Jesse Jackson and the civil rights work. We know who went to the funeral, showed up: Clinton, Biden, Obama, and Harris. And they brought him back home to South Carolina, had the final funeral services in Chicago. And then after that, I heard that Jesse Jackson Jr. was upset because some of the remarks of President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Barack Obama. What do y'all update me? I'm not, because I'm playing the straight guy, right? My question. So what really happened? What was the controversy?
I'll let Brandon tell it, then I'll give my thoughts.
Okay. So was that a good setup? Was that a good setup? I know we lost you, Brandon.
That was a great setup.
Okay. All right,
and you did for a second. As you saw, my dog Blackish was just making it difficult. But anyway, let me just say, first and foremost, I got to shout out a couple people, because the fact that Jesse Jackson's body was brought to South Carolina was the work of some key South Carolinians, first and foremost. When the news broke that he passed away, in conversation, with I was talking to Brandon Brown, who's running for the Senate. Brandon said, "You know what? It would be great if we could have him lie in state." And I was like, "Maybe we could do that." And I called Representative Wendell Gilliard because I know he was a consultant for Rainbow Push, and I asked him what were they planning on doing, and a resolution had already been sent up to the governor to get the flags flown at half staff. So I asked him, well, can you draft a resolution for him to lie in state? And he did it the next day. He had it, sent it over to me. But he said, out of respect for the Greenville delegation, I'm going to take it to them so they can sign on. It's three members of the Greenville delegation. Only one of them agreed to sign on to the resolution to ask the governor so Jesse Jackson can lie in state in South Carolina. I won't say which one of the three it was. So then uh, the whole conversation was dead at that point in time because now you can't even get the delegation to be on one accord to make this happen. So then Brandon Brown, who refused for this to go down, Jerry Govan, Representative Jerry Govan, and former state representative Mr. James Felder, the three of them met at the state house. Mr. Felder marched into the governor's office without an appointment, without permission, and said, "This is what we want to happen, and we got to make it happen today." And the three of them went from committee office to leadership of the House and the Senate, and literally got everything in place. All we needed was a letter. I drafted the letter, and then Mr. Felder sent it to the Greenville delegation and made them put their names on it so that we could check all the boxes to make it happen. So I just want to say that first, because a lot of folks don't know how that happened. And some folks are trying to take credit for things that they didn't want to be a part of in the first place. So, so I'll say that. Now, in terms of what happened in Chicago, um,
Do you think Blackish got him again? Yeah, I think that's the coolest dog name, by the way,
I
Blackish.
know.
Yeah, and I think Blackish might have blacked him out. Oh,
Black,
just
he's gotten big. He's gotten big. Yeah,
look at.
yeah, yeah, and I'm so glad that they were able to do it in South Carolina.
I know, and
Obviously
James
it's his home
Felder.
state, and Representative Felder has been a leader decades, and so
Yes,
he knows what to do, and even in his age now, he's still moving around
yeah.
and getting them together.
Brandon, we glad to see you back. I said Blackish must have blacked you out.
no, so every time somebody calls, it knocks out the audio. I don't
Oh,
know.
okay.
Yeah, I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know
you
what's
have
happening.
to put your phone on do not disturb.
Yeah,
And because that happens to me all the time. People, you get in a meeting, that's when y'all decide to call.
right, right.
Look, nobody calls when I don't have anything to do.
Thank you. Quiet all day long. Been quiet the last 2 hours. All of a sudden, the phone blowing up. It's
Ring it,
all blown
yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Y'all sitting together conspiring too to do it and everything. But go ahead, Brandon. We were just
yeah.
getting to the Chicago part.
Chicago,
So,
yeah.
so Chicago, Jesse Jackson Jr. polls came out. He's leading by a country mile, all the way up until the passing of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. The funeral happens. You have three living former presidents, including the first the first black and woman vice president there. And what people remember is that Jesse Jackson Jr. said, "You had three presidents come up here and speak, and none of them knew my daddy." Now, what you can ascertain that he meant from that was they knew his name, they knew of his work, but they did not personally know him or take that extra step to get to know him beyond the moniker that we know as just the big man that is Jesse Jackson Senior. Uh, you could also take it as in, you know, Jesse Jackson Jr. did go to prison, and
Hmm.
was seeking a
That's what I
pardon.
thought the politics was about. That's what I
Was
thought.
was seeking a
Nope.
pardon. Yep, go ahead, Jamar.
Because I mean, there's a couple connections here. I
Mhm.
mean, Brandon, to what you're saying, right? It's like when President Obama was running, Reverend Jackson got caught on the hot mic after an
Mhm.
interview. So, I think y'all remember that moment. I'm not going to repeat
Oh
that
yeah.
on live.
Mhm.
And then obviously, yes, unfortunately, Jesse Jackson, or the congressman, because we give him his
Yep.
respect, Congressman Jackson Jr., had a run in with the law, served time, and did seek a presidential pardon that was not granted
Right.
by the Biden administration. However, there were other pardons that were granted, at the end of the Biden-Harris administration. And I think Vice President Harris just got caught in because she was the vice president. I don't think that
Yeah.
they have a real issue with her.
Oh, she just caught a stray.
she
That's
she
all.
caught
I
a stray,
believe it.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I guess, but I think the political thing that you have to be careful of is, one, this is Jamar's opinion now. You don't shoot the messenger. Is, Jesse Jackson was a political figure, right? In
Mhm.
terms of being active in our politics, right? He engaged with presidents, he engaged with prime ministers and kings, and even dictators to some degree, right? Because
And
he
they were
actually
all
helped.
at that
He
funeral.
and he helped secure, political prisoners, right, and
Mm-hmm.
military prisoners, right, and extensive legacy. Obviously he ran for president twice himself, and actually after Reverend Jackson's run is how we got the proportional delegates,
Yep.
and so he actually changed the Democratic Party, I think, in
Yep.
a lot of ways, and so he is a political leader, and I think that at the end of the day, I think the politics wasn't so much in their remarks about him. I think the politics actually is in Jesse Jackson Jr.'s relationships or not with those presidents who he felt had power in a certain way to support him. Because I actually feel like it wasn't the politics of his father. I thought it was his politics that he was talking about. And because that's just me outside looking in, because and I didn't think that these three presidents that spoke at the funeral and the vice president that spoke at the funeral are his friends like that. I'm sure they respect his legacy. They wanted to work to advance the things that he was fighting for. But again, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, right? And so for me, it's also like I've never viewed that President Obama and Reverend Jesse Jackson were going to be best friends, in that way, right? Or I don't know if President Obama looked at Reverend Jackson as some type of mentor in that way, or what was the relationship while President Obama was in the White House. Did he see Reverend Jackson as a mentor and as an advisor? I didn't think they had that type of relationship. I think he had respect for and admiration for Reverend Jackson, but I don't think it was a consistent mentor type relationship. And so I would think that when you have those three presidents at the public funeral, because there were many politicians that spoke, the mayor, right? And so is it, so I don't think that his remarks were about the politics. I think his remarks were about things that he felt that those presidents did not do
Mhm.
as it relates to their family and their legacy.
Right.
That's just
I
me though.
wonder if that was my daddy there and you were President Jamar, and I asked you personally to help out my child, and you had the power, authority, and privilege to do so,
Mhm.
and you denied my personal request, and then did the same thing that I'm asking you for your own son, and just turn
Oh
your
well,
back
that's
on me, on
I
my
mean,
daddy. And now and
that's a
now you
valid
got the
point.
nerve. Yeah, and now you got the nerve to sit on the front row. I don't know how I would act. Maybe, as some folks say, my color might show up a little bit up on that stage too. Now, at the end of the day, uh, Congressman Jackson lost his bid to go back to Congress, and folks are saying some folks are trying to say it's because of that statement. I don't think it is necessarily fully because of that statement. Now, I do believe that statement worked in with a series of other attacks that we witnessed over the last 2 weeks, just creating a bunch of mess. And people don't like to be associated with mess, especially voters. They can be messy themselves, but you can't have any mess going on as a candidate. And I think that played a part, but also just like when I showed up in Texas on election day with Jasmine Crockett, there was not a whole lot of ground activity taking place that you could see in order to turn out the vote beyond the base for those candidates. Now, unlike Texas, there wasn't a whole bunch of, hanky panky happening at the voting polls and with the voting process. But just like in Texas, it wasn't a huge, robust field operation taking place. And I think what you saw in that 29% that came out and voted for Congressman Jackson, that was the base of support for him anyway. And I don't think they got too far out from that base.
Well, this is, I want to say two things quick about the funeral. It sounds like a typical Black family funeral because family gonna fight,
Big time.
everybody high
Oh,
emotion,
big time.
and the only thing that didn't happen is at the repast somebody didn't get into a fight and uncle didn't take you to the trunk of the car to get the liquor. Okay,
The
so
And,
moonshine.
in this case, it seemed like a couple of the uncles didn't even go to the repast.
there you go, there you go. So I
So,
don't think in the sense of say is there going to be lasting damage or anything. I do think the right wing media tried to make hay with it. And that's one of the reasons I didn't pay attention to. I saw headlines and I'm like, that's the right wing folks trying to stir something up because I didn't hear the controversy. I just saw some headlines and I just let it pass. I do send my condolences to the family because regardless, it's a very emotional time. I've lost both parents and okay, family's going to do family stuff and my family personally, so I could certainly relate to that as a family, but to have it under a week of activities in the political world is paying attention to what's happening globally. I mean, people are paying attention to that. It creates stress. And then the second thing, and I love how we segue as we talk about these different subjects and it leads into other topics we want to talk about. I think the result of these, if you're talking there's no ground game, to me, the result is this is reflective of that the Democratic Party cannot take for granted the vote in November. It has to be more than vote for us because we're against Trump. You have to go to the ground and explain to people that we're going to make affordability an issue, but with real policy. We're going to be talking about universal health care. We're going to talk about universal basic income. We're going to be talking about raising the minimum wage. We're going to be talking about this is how we're going to make real investment in wind and solar and alternative green renewable energy. Because if you want to really lower your bills, this is what we attempted to do under Biden, but Trump came and killed that. But we are all in now. We got to go to a new deal, green new deal, whatever you want to call it. This is our moment. Put a pin in that because I got to say this. And right now, as of March 18, 2026, I think the Democratic Party as a whole is totally missing that. You have to go big because you can't look at American mythology. You have to look at global history about what's going on now. And the Democratic Party is so busy protecting its flank rather than they're being defensive rather than offensive. They're in very much danger of missing the moment. And it is very scary to me that you cited two races. One in particular was national attention people were paying attention to it. And that you're talking to me that there was not a strong ground game. What the hell is going on? What the hell is going on?
And that's basics. That's one-on-one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the thing that we're looking at in this election, right? It's going back to the people, but also being creative, right? Because I actually think that a ground game has changed since COVID. I think people are used to your just typical, you knock on doors and you go home. And that's fine. You should still knock on doors. But I think we've got to do more community things. We all grew up in South Carolina, right? Where it's like you knew you went to church and you went to the Rice Festival, into the festivals and to the skating rink. I think that we're starting to miss community in politics.
Yes.
And I'm gonna say this, and people are gonna get mad about it, but that's okay. I live. I've never died by criticism, thank the Lord. But I'm not against digital. I'm against digital because I believe people are using it as a band-aid to not do the groundwork that they need to do. Now, it made sense in COVID, obviously. People, we were trying to be safe and, not make people sick and all that. So, that 2020 makes sense to me. But since 2020, I have seen a lot more campaigns spend more money on text and influencer programs than they do on canvassing, right? Yeah. And you're starting to see this disproportionate piece. Because it's like, you could have knocked on 3 doors when you made that video. And you're more secure to get the vote if somebody showed up to your door than you saw a video online. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe there needs to be some polling or some kind of test that's done about it, because I don't see people looking at a bunch of videos and saying, yep, I'm going to get up and vote for that candidate. And they have no connection to that campaign.
Right.
I don't think we need polling. And as a matter of fact, if I hear about one more damn poll.
Oh, polls are good if you use it right.
If you use it, yeah.
But we're polling everything. That's why
that's
we're
true
missing the point of this is not political moment. This is a moral moment. We are polling whether people are opposing a war. And it's every day is a poll coming out. People are dying. I don't want to hear about a poll. Right. And all people have to decide between medicine and electricity bill, right? And it's even deeper than that. People are now, just in Georgetown, my hometown, there was a town hall meeting and it came up. People literally are like about to become homeless because they can't pay the mortgage and the energy bill. Yeah. This is real, but you're going to go do a poll? Well, I got a poll for you. Georgetown, and you've heard me say, we flipped from red to blue. We did a mix of things. So I agree with you, Jamarr, with the digital. We did use social media, but we did postcards, we did door knocking, we did phone calls.
You got to do all of it. You got to be a mix, all of it.
And what's something else that's important too, because the person who I thought was the front runner ended up not being the front runner. But the person who ended up being the highest winning vote getter, community, was in before even deciding I'm going to run.
She was
whether you agree with her or not on stuff, was in the community. So she had her base to work with. And it was quiet because they didn't know, because it wasn't political. It was community oriented. We've got to find more people who are community oriented. And too many times we confuse influencers with being in the community. And most of the influencers, they on social media community, they not in real life community. They are not in the community helping people figure out how I'm getting food on the table or getting that jacket to stay warm, or either taking the ride to church. And my number one vote getter in the city of Georgia, ours, I should say, because the party really raised money and got behind this team, drives people to church.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me them people did not come out vote for her.
Yeah.
Okay. And this been going on for years.
She drive them everywhere, not just to church. She drive them to the doctor's appointments, to the grocery store. Folks know that they can call on her when they need it.
Thank you. Even before she even thought about running for office and was going to city council meetings, just listening and learning and speaking up in public comments. We need more people like that running. Absolutely. And everybody could do it. Just become an advocate, a real advocate for your community. And I'm going to say this one thing, and Jamarr, you might get mad at me. I'm just going to say it because it kind of bothering me. So I'm just going to say it because we have a moment here and all. I actually think Jasmine Crockett got in the race too late.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah. I'm not mad about that.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean, she got in 90 days before the election. I mean, we saw. Look, I equate it to. I said this to a donor. I equate it to if Kamala Harris couldn't flip a nation in 107 days. I think that was the indicator, and I don't know. I haven't.
And I love her. I love Jasmine Crockett.
This is not a knock. This is not a knock, Jasmine.
Logistics. Yeah, this is a logistics
this is
thing.
but this is we're all strategists and we've done this for a long time. Because we all of us on here done seen people run 2 years and lose. And so
and we're about to see it again.
But I was always very nervous. I was like, did she have enough time? And I think that it is hard to set up that real infrastructure in that fast. Because she got in the race in the filing deadline. Then obviously we went into the holidays, so people check out. Then you go into the new year. Then you had a bunch of debates. You got to get around the state. Obviously, it's Texas. It's 254 counties, right? To get around, you got to get to these events. She is still a sitting member of Congress,
right? And showing up,
and she still is going to committee meetings and doing the thing. And then February comes, it's early voting. We have 2-week early voting period. So so it was just points that she lost time. And great that she still was able to do her job. But if the young man, Representative Talarico, which I do know him and like him very much, and he served in the state house. He was one of the seats that Planned Parenthood flipped many years ago.
He had been campaigning,
but he'd been campaigning since June,
and that's a hill you got to overcome. Go ahead, Brandon.
And we just got to also look at the fact that she really didn't solidify her campaign team until that last 50 to 45 days. So she had a 90-day campaign, but that campaign team was evolving all the way up until that time. And
so it's time to vote.
Yeah. And it's hard to start getting momentum on top of she only raised, and I hate to say only, $5 million compared to his, $24 million in lead time, so it was just a really, really tough scenario that she found herself in. She was definitely the right candidate at the right time. She just got in. I agree with you, got in too late. And then talking about that digital stuff that you were talking about, Jamarr, here in South Carolina, we had a candidate. She spent $400,000 on digital in 1 quarter at the end of last year, and has shown up to less than 15 counties. So now her strategy that she has, we're going to throw it on digital, and I don't have to show up in these communities. I think we're going to see somebody spend a lot of money to lose in their election in June.
Are we thinking of the same person?
The one who has not called you as the chair of the Georgetown County Democratic Party?
God. Yes.
Yep, same person.
Which, okay, now that we brought this up.
And you want to be the Democratic nominee, and you won't call the Democratic chairs and precinct chairs.
And it's not like I have not told. It's not like I have not told a close friend on that campaign that information, and still have not heard anything. And now I'm really starting to get pissed off. I really am. And you don't want me. And I'm a little my little non-humble brag to get on social media or any place and start talking about that.
That is wild.
Which we are talking now, and we're not calling names.
So can I
might have to start calling names.
So since we're in primary season, can I say, and this is not just South Carolina, this is all over the country. The Democratic Party, people have their feelings about the party. The party has a built-in infrastructure. Now, how you work the infrastructure and manage it is different by state, obviously. Right, there county chair, there's precinct chairs, right? There's Democratic clubs like your Democratic Women or Young Democrats or things like that. And so I know that candidates, especially there are a lot of candidates that are not usually typically as involved in that infrastructure before they run. However, there is a place for that infrastructure. And what candidates I believe are missing is, and some, I should say, not all, but some are missing is, you all are running general election campaigns without your base. And the Democratic primary is the opportunity to engage and build and maximize your base. And why people are not getting out of these Democratic primary, because they're sitting there and saying, well, I don't have to call the county chair. I don't have to call the precinct. What they're going to do for me? Well, no, they probably can't do a tangible thing for you right now, because a lot of them may stay neutral or try to be fair. Some do endorse, everybody makes their own decision. You all have to remember that you are running a primary, you are engaging Democratic voters, and if you want to go to November, you have to get the nomination. And so you got to work this infrastructure and this network of people, whatever you believe about them. You still have to work that infrastructure and that network to get the freaking nomination. And so people are losing that can't get to November, and they're like, and there's, yes, I believe there's some racism, misogyny, but it's also, but like, you didn't work the infrastructure either. And Marilyn, I think you said it best. I'm going to lift it up, is the Democratic pace is supposed to get you looking at the gate. Now, the general election, that's where you get the persuadables and you get over the gate, and you can't look at the gate if you won't even talk to the infrastructure. And part of the infrastructure is the base. And if you can't even talk to the county chair, you're not talking to the base.
So it's safe for me to say that analogy of your base getting you to the finish line and the persuadables getting you through the finish line. I learned that from Jamarr Brown, and it sounds like Jamarr Brown learned that from Marilyn Hemingway.
Yes, I sure.
Okay.
We've been talking about a lot of this stuff for 10, 20 years.
My motto is teach one, reach one. That's my motto. And so, I met you, Marilyn, in like I'm not trying to age us at all, but I met you.
I look good for my age. So
Okay, black and crack. Do you hear me? And so, I want to say we started talking about this stuff like 2004, something like that. 04, 05. This 20 years.
22 years.
And y'all still doing the same. And these people still doing the same mess.
They're not really listening. So I do want to say two things. I agree totally with what y'all are saying. One thing, I'm going to call out my people because I love my people. We got to call it out. And I'm going back to Jasmine Crockett and Tallarico, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Yeah, that's how you say it.
It's I know the average voter doesn't pay attention to this, and we kind of get caught up in social media stuff. Like, oh, I'm not going to vote in November because of this. But understand the bigger picture. And that's why I brought up her getting in too late. And it's not a knock to her at all. I love Jasmine Crockett, but we need to look at more than what happened on election day. We need to look at the bigger picture, and
what led to that.
And what led to that. And I am criticizing the party because I don't think the party is educating the base on the logistics of it.
I agree.
Of what really happened, because that opens the door for you to get people out to vote who may right now be in their feelings, and rightfully so, because when you're in a primary and your feelings are hurt and everything, you gonna feel some kind of way. I mean, that's just life, right? You gonna feel some kind of way. So and I think that's what's happening now. But once people kind of calm down and they're ready, like, okay, they're just there about June or whatever. The party needs to come back and do some education. Okay.
Absolutely.
But it's still on the Black community to be more open-minded and not so recognize we're in our feelings right now. And I'm not denigrating those feelings. They're very important, but there's a bigger picture here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jamarr.
No, I was just going to add to what you're saying about being open-minded. As Black people, and I love our people, but we have to be strategic. Because at the end of the day, I tell people all the time that elections is a contest for power. Like, I'm not voting for my best friend. I'm not voting for my Valentine. I'm not voting for my high school sweetheart. I ain't even got to like you, quite frankly. I have voted for people I don't even like. I will not hang out with them. I don't talk to them. But who's going to be the person that's going to get me the closest to the thing I need and I want? And so that's how we have to start looking at elections. Yes, I think Jasmine Crockett is wonderful. I had the honor to be able to help get her elected, right? And be able to work with her on a lot of different issues. And I actually talked to her last week, but just to check on her, And she's actually in DC back at work, And so, but for me, it's about, but we also have, this is where the digital part comes in, because I think there are a lot of people who potentially go viral for being the loudest. And I think that there are people who are in Texas who are having some conversations about, okay, what is best for us? Because if y'all think that John Cornyn and Ken Paxton are better than James Tallarico, then y'all not thinking this thing through, right? And so are we going to just pass up the whole election, maybe because our person didn't win? Right, because it would have been the same thing if she'd won and his people lost. It's the same thing, right? Now, I think the Democratic Party has an issue right now with how they manage and navigate what we call identity politics, right? That the Democratic Party has been the diverse party. And, with reaching to African Americans, to Latinos, Hispanics, AAPI, young people in rural, suburban, urban communities, etc. Right? And I think it's great that we have this microcosm of the country, right? That's supposed to be in this political party, but it comes to a head when that representation is calling for leadership, right? And so I know that there are a lot of people who believe, the Democratic Party don't care about black women, right? Look what happened to Jasmine Crockett. Look what happened to Robin Kelly. Even though, yes, they have a black woman as their nominee in Illinois, right? But we have to be able to embrace our diversity, but not let our diversity divide us in a way that we miss the ultimate goal.
Which I love.
Yes, so it would be great to have another black woman, especially from a place like Texas. Yes, I supported her,
Yeah.
But I also now that process has played out, as messy as it could have been. That process has played out, and now here we are. And here's the choice that we have to make. And it is irresponsible, in my opinion, for us to sit out an election, especially in a state like Texas, that is a microcosm of the country, where people's rent are going up, people are dying, as you said earlier, and we just gonna say we just sitting out because maybe somebody who looks like us is not the final nominee.
Yeah.
Now, I think that we've got to be strategic, and then now hopefully take the lessons of Jasmine Crockett and the things that we're learning because Jasmine Crockett did run, and run people for office all up and down the ticket the next cycle to really be able to influence and build the power that we want, for the long term. And we still have to stop thinking about every single election. We need to start thinking about, okay, how do we take what Jasmine Crockett did? She got 1 million votes in 90 days.
Right. Yeah.
That is an accomplishment. How do we take that and grow it in the state?
Yeah. It is, and she is a.
She did a thing. She did a thing.
That's right. She did. She really did. With as y'all described some things that were working against her, but she did a thing. She did a thing, and I think too many people. And I know we got to wrap up and everything because we all got to go where we got to go. It's not only thinking in terms of campaign. It's what is your vision for your country? What is your vision for your community? That's where it starts. Right. Politics is simply a brick in the many steps to make the vision become reality. And too many people don't have vision. They're not creative anymore. And I'm calling out everybody for that. I have a vision. I know Brandon has a vision. Jamarr has a vision. Y'all, we got visions y'all don't even have a clue about. So the work that we do is putting bricks into the path to make the vision come to reality. So the question is, what is your vision and how are you going to make it happen? And that includes politics, economics, education, all of that. It is intersectionality, a term that was developed by a Black woman, by the way. It's intersectionality of all those things to make your vision happen. And anybody can have a vision, because if there's nothing else I have learned in my 60 years on this earth, that everything is made up. Everything is made up. And then once you realize it's made up, you can make something new. You can make something new. It's all on you, but you got to have a vision first. You really do. Even if your vision is every damn pothole going to be fixed in my city. That's a vision.
Yep.
And how you going to make that happen? Well, you got to make sure you run for office and get elected, or elect people who can make that vision happen. All right. That's it. Right. I know Brandon wants to say something. Brandon, we've been talking, and you've been dealing with Blackish. I'm assuming it's Blackish.
Well, now it's the 3 kids.
Oh, okay. So. Black people. Blackish.
Not black people.
Black
people. I feel like I'm living in an episode of Blackish every now and again.
I do like that show.
So I just want to say that Jasmine proved that she is a national force, a national voice. And I think that, even her losing that race is not going to stop her, but give her a bigger opportunity to be a national figure. And I hope that she continues and she grows, her brand and her infrastructure, her platform, and all that other good stuff. And I 100% agree with Jamarr on the identity politics and the stubbornness that we may feel sometimes when it's, hey, my person didn't win.
So I'm not going to vote. They show that they don't support black candidates, so they don't want my black vote. We cannot get stuck in that trap. But the one thing I don't agree with, and not saying that Jamar said this, I don't agree with pushing black folks out of races to make room for
Oh,
rich white men. I don't. And that one's hitting close to home.
okay, I gotta get off the screen.
We don't have I don't think we got time to dive deep into that. But what they say, if you know, you know. But I think that that will be the biggest detriment to our Democratic Party if we start now in this midterm and carry that into the presidential primary in ways that I see folks having conversations and maneuvering even to this day.
I will say this, Brandon, and then I'll let Jamar close us today. Um, I am a true believer in primaries because primaries give the people their chance to have their voice heard on a very localized level. I may not ultimately win that primary. My candidate may not ultimately win that primary, but if I know I've been given 2 to 3 months to fight for that person, to hear the issues from not only my candidate, but all candidates, that the day of the primary, win or lose, I know my voice was heard. My vote was not taken for granted. It is more likely the week after the election, after everybody got some rest, that I'm going to say, let's get to work and win in November. But you got to have a true primary, not one that is manipulated behind the scenes. And you hand the candidate to the people rather than the people choosing the candidate. That's problematic. And that's a problem, whether it's South Carolina or any other state. And the Democratic Party needs to get their act together. Jamar.
Well, the only thing I'll wrap up on that part is, I mean, primaries are, again, as I say all the time, elections are a contest of power. And that is even in the party, right? A contest of what vision we want to present to the general public. And so I agree with you about primaries. I think if you participate in the primary process and you really engage, you actually become a better candidate, quite frankly, because it tests you. You can test, and it also tests your infrastructure. Let's see how our field program works. Let's see how our comms program works. People don't think about that, but I look at the primary as a test run for the general election. So, let's say Jasmine Crockett did make it. Okay, well, we see what didn't work. So let's not do that again in November, And so, unfortunately, everybody doesn't get that second chance in the same cycle like that. But, ultimately, for me, and then the last piece about, primaries that I'll say is, democracy says that people are supposed to have a contest of ideas, campaign, the voters choose, and we deal with that accordingly. And so that is the same position that I take here and in all elections as well. And so, I'm just excited to be here with y'all. I know we talked way longer than, we just needed to catch up.
I know we went long today, yeah.
But I mean, I think, the only thing I'll say is like engagement is the win at this point. And so for me, it is about, and you choose how you engage, right? There are going to be people who run for office. There are going to be people who work on campaigns or volunteer on campaigns. There are going to be people who put together protests. There are going to be people who put together advocacy days. There are people who putting together phone banks to get people to call their senator or whatever the case is, that they're fighting bad legislation. Whatever it is, you have to do something and do something now and do something consistently for your community.
I totally agree. Jamar, Brandon, thank you very much. I'm going to go off live, but stay just for 2 minutes.
Okay.
And I appreciate it.
Wait,
but
what about our books?
Oh, yes,
Oh, I
Brandon,
forgot
go
my
ahead.
book.
We forgot the book. I got a book too, but go ahead, Brandon.
So my book recommendation for the month, it's $13 on Amazon, is Brother Howard Thurman's autobiography, With Head and Heart. I don't know if you can see it. Where is it? There we go.
Yeah.
Check it out. It is an amazing book. We could have a whole conversation about this book in itself. And it's an easy read.
So I recommend that for anyone who wants to learn about this work, advocacy, power building. Read the book.
All right, very good. I am trying to get a picture up here, but I do have a book. It's called The Resistance History of the United States.
That's a good one.
Let me see. By Tad Stromer. I'm working on a different computer, y'all, so it may not come up. And I actually don't have it yet. I follow him on TikTok, Tad Stromer, A Resistance History of the United States. Before we got on, we really did have a brief conversation, y'all, about that moderates are problematic. Moving to the center, I think is problematic in this time of history. But Tad Stromer literally has written a history, a resistance history of the United States that I recommend highly. A Resistance History of the United States by Tad Stromer, to the point that he's living in Denmark now because he's got so many threats. Yeah, he's John Hopkins professor. He's a professor over there, but they are not happy with him, the political establishment, because, he really talks about from day one, United States to now, the resistance history. It's different from what we know about our history. And Jamarr, did you think of one while we were talking?
So there are two, and I should walk over to my desk and go get them. But anyway, so one is I'm rereading the 1619 Project. So, and that tells a good book about especially the racial divisions and how that shows up in especially economic policy. I'm enjoying reading that again because I think we're living in that in some ways in a more modern form, as well. And then the second book that I'm reading, because I refused to read it until I got it autographed, is 107 Days by Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. But I was like, I'm not reading that book till she signed it. And so Sister Girl has signed my book. And so, but what I think is significant about it is, we've never had a Black woman as the nominee. And and this was a historic election, right? Where it's very rare that 107 days before an election, the president, who's the nominee or the presumed nominee, says, "You know what? I'm not running for re-election," and the vice president had to step up and take the mantle. The only other time that got close to happening was, 68 with Johnson stepping down and then Hubert Humphrey, but learning her experience has been different because we see things on the media and social media and we think we know what was happening.
Book.
It was actually interesting to learn what she was thinking.
That's a good book.
It's a really good book. And I haven't finished.
I haven't read it yet, so I have to get
I'm like halfway through. But it almost feels like a diary of like what she experienced. And I don't think we get to see what presidential candidates experience. Like when you put yourself up to run for the highest office in the land, that is a tough thing to do. And then to do it in 100 days. It's interesting to really read it and to really hear her life experience and her perspective. And it was actually good to hear her like clear up a lot of things. So for example, like the Republicans tagged her the border czar. And she talked about like some of the different investments they made with Guatemala and the public-private partner. Like, and I'm like, girl, why you didn't say that on the debate stage? But and then you're like, well, why did you say that? But it's good just to hear it because I think we all had thoughts about the election, and y'all think people don't really know what they're talking about.
But we had thoughts about the election and her tenure as vice president too. And she clears up both of those.
I do not, and I agree with her, and I have been saying this for years. I do not think the administration defended her.
No, they did not.
And I think that, and I'm not saying that all administrations had to do it in a unique way, but let's say, for example, back when like Joe Biden got on Meet the Press, do y'all remember the marriage equality thing? Because Obama came in office campaigning on civil unions, not full marriage equality, and Biden said it on Meet the Press, and then Obama had to move. But Obama still defended his vice president.
Yes.
Even though, he had to do that shift. I don't know if Biden did that as much. And so it was interesting. It was interesting, but we also as Black people don't get defended a lot. And so I even sometimes have to tell people like, look, this is what I've done. This is what I know. And so to watch her be in the second highest office in the land still having to fight that same kind of corporate fight, that Black women have faced for generations, quite frankly, it was good to see her do it, but it was sad that she had to do it.
Yeah.
Because the administration didn't defend her, in my opinion.
Well, that patriarchy has a chokehold on all of us, whether we realize it or not. You have to be anti-patriarchy. You just can't say I'm against it. You have to be very intentional and deliberate. So that did play a role. So
I'm reading her book.
Very good. Thank you for the books, because y'all, we got to start doing civic education again. And even if we just tell y'all what books to read, this is part of learning how your government works, because this all plays, it gives you peeks behind the scene. I especially love 107 Days, because that's a peek behind the scenes on how government works, and we need to do that more often. And we're going to be signing off, but before we go, I want to remind everyone this Sunday, because we're usually live on Sunday, that we will be joined by Amadou Masali, who's going to be talking about his book, The Gullah Geechee Language Manual. And yes, he will be teaching a course about this fall, and Amadou works with the chamber, so he does work with us, and he's going to come on and talk about his book. And y'all, I don't know how I put this on here. Now I got to figure out how to get it off. All right, there we go. Thank you, Jamarr. Thank you, Brandon. We went longer than usual, but that's fine. We are back every third Sunday, y'all, for Politics Talk, and hopefully next time we will have a State House representative. We welcome them to come on and talk with us, or a representative from the No Kings rally to talk to them also, and try to be true to our beliefs and everything. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good night.